right, welcome everyone to another episode of Dissolving the Divide. I think today is number 7. We're just moving right along here. Oh no, today's number 8. Today's number 8. And I'm Leslie Powers. I'm here with my co-host Derek Bartolicelli and our producer for Dissolving the Divide. And we are endeavoring to explore dialectics, to dialogue on issues that create division among people, within ourselves and between us. And today we have a really interesting topic and a wonderful guest, my dear friend, Chris Jansen, my partner in life right now. And he is here to talk about something that really creates divide among people, that keeps people stuck and makes us dependent and tied to forces that take away some of our independence and freedom. And so Derek, why don't you say a few words?
Thanks. I get the honor and pleasure to introduce your partner, my brother man as well, and just being able to meet him as well, as I mentioned in our first episode, Leslie. We can even title that number 0, like the cosmic egg of, the nucleus of this whole entire project, Dissolving the Divide. But yeah, you might have seen Chris and I talk about, and trying to exemplify and explore what it means to be like a Renaissance man, asking about how that holistic living and pathwork is going. Out in Half Moon Bay, we even bowled a few rounds over there, and yeah, even met up with them in Reading. They got a lot of stuff going on with networking. Chris is weaving wheels within wheels of so much stuff going on, and a great mentor figure, pretty much, even though he's a young ass, not even old man. And yeah, speaking with him, we're looking to be like 120 years old at least. He's been Wim Hofing it. He can hold his breath for like 10 minutes, and you might catch him at your local body of water, swimming in some frozen water sometime, maybe. You never know. So Chris, I think I could drag this on for a long time, but yeah, I'm so glad to have you on, and really looking forward to, just incredible insight and energy that you bring to so many discussions, and have a well-rounded view and perspective on a lot of stuff through a lot of knowledge and integration of that as well. So yeah, brother man.
Yeah, thanks so much, Derek. Really glad to be here, and proud to be working with you guys on this project. I've been inspired by what you guys are doing, and Derek, you always inspire me with your style of speech and all the wonderful words you use and rhyming, and inspire me to bring out my creative side again and getting back into some of my lyric and musical makings. I really appreciate that energy, and Leslie, you inspire me every day with all the wonderful things you do. And so yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and I think it's an important thing what you guys are talking about, because so many podcasts and shows, I've been talking about this for ever since I'm doing my show. People want to talk about the problems. They want to point out, oh, here's the problem in the world. Here's the conspiratorial aspects of it. Here's the evildoers, But ultimately, what do we do about all this stuff? It comes back to us and the responsibility of what do we do in our daily lives. And so really getting into the crunch of that is solving these divides. And these divides are what are creating the obstacles from the better world that we're trying to envision without evil, where we're not stealing from one another, where we're not raping each other's freedom around the world, and even in our own neighborhoods, and even in our relationships. There's a reflection that goes on by living in this caged world of slavery. We actually live in that in our own bodies and minds too, in a hermetic, reflective type way, as above, so below, as within, so without. If we're living in a world of slavery and we're still acting it out, that means we're still doing it to ourselves too. So we need to reverse that. And part of the way we do that is breaking down the psychology of what's really going on, the why, the inner why of our inner religion, and understanding what's happening there. And I think that's what you guys are doing. You're picking it apart, each one of these episodes, with people of what's dividing us, what's dividing our mind, what's keeping this two hemispheres separate and keeping them from, integrating and popping out that intelligence,
Yeah, really well said, Chris. So you've done some thinking about what you wanted to, what divide you wanted to conquer today or explore, and I found it really interesting how with the thought process you had. So, if you don't mind sharing that a little bit and introduce your topic.
Sure, absolutely. I wanted to take on the whole topic when I heard what you guys were doing, and I started taking some notes in my phone, and I started realizing, all this massive things that are tied in with authority, right? Authority, people's belief in authority, people's belief itself, how we look at belief, and all these things that we argue and fight about. But when I kind of like let it run through my brain for a few weeks, and I looked at my notes the second or the third time, I realized, wow, what I gave you guys in terms of topic ideas could have been a whole book, much more than an hour or two discussion. And when I really distilled it down, I'm like, what is the focus of what I'm really getting at here? And when I really thought about that, it's something that's been working through my mind in the past few weeks that I've been calling money-based decision making. And I've come to recognize that the real chains, the real bars of this cage we're in are made of money. And I did some episodes on my show, End Evil podcast. Gosh, it's probably been more than a year now. And I did 2 episodes that were called In Greed We Trust. And when you think about, the more I've reflected on this, each one of us, including myself, including every church people have been to, every institution, they all make money-based decisions over principle-based decisions. And that is going to continually keep us back from being in harmony with natural law, which has to do with understanding morality, objective morality. And if you're understanding and in alignment with objective morality, your decisions are going to be 100% principle-based, right? But none of us are quite there because we're so wrapped up in this money. This money is the sorcerer, the sorcerer's magic notes, and they have us bound because every time we want to do something, say, what holds me back from making my podcast bigger or doing it every day of the week or spending all of my time working towards freedom and trying to prevent children from getting kidnapped and raped? And, what keeps us from doing that? Well, because we got to make money, or we have responsibilities. What we call responsibilities are actually paying the government, its fees, or paying the fees to other people so they can pay the statist fees. Even if we're not doing it, it's still getting extrapolated through everything we do. So the biggest divide in terms of the physical, real world problems right in front of us, I think, are really money-based decisions that people are making that's leading them in the wrong direction.
Yeah, very, very a key point, Chris. I was thinking about the way money can exacerbate the inner divide by being such a source of stress, of survival stress, making money, working our tails off to survive, right, puts us into a more of a animal brain mentality where, we're in a fight or flight response, an imbalanced brain, right? So we have this inner divide that's money encourages. And then there's divide between people in social class, in what you have access to, what kind of health care you can get, what types of material goods, what type of freedom, how far you can travel, right? All these things that divide people has a lot to do with money. Yeah.
And, one of the things I covered when I discussed this in Greed We Trust presentations was money itself is not evil. Okay, well, maybe that term, the way we've begun to term it, the monai, we'll talk about that. We could. But some sort of form of currency, I think, personally, in my thought process, is a natural progression of people working together. If we were cooperating, if we were all dropped on an island and we all were in a moral decision-based mindset and we were ready to start anew, eventually we would still come up with some sort of currency of trade for our time and labor. I think it would be a natural thing. It's like a natural thing to want to, if somebody does something kind for you, to want to pay them back, right? And
That's the law of reciprocity, or the law of
Right.
Gebel, if you will.
Sharing,
Sure.
It's as old as sharing. And if we decided, oh, let's start using these shells, clams. We used to joke about clams, me and my friends, instead of dollars. How many clams does this cost? If we were trading clams, that's not a bad thing necessarily. What makes it bad? And this is the way I've always described it in my mind. You originally, like, you think back to traders, maybe on the Silk Road, or some native cultures and new people showing up in the land, and they're meeting up somewhere in a field, and they're bringing out the furs or the vegetables, and they're like, hey, I'll trade you these furs for these vegetables. People have always worked this out through time, and trade creates peace, actually, because if the people on one side of the mountains have the fur and the people on the other side in the field have the vegetables, we need each other. We need your vegetables, you need our fur. That actually creates security and peace between us, because the last thing you want to do is destroy the people there hunting the fur you need to keep you warm so you can grow your vegetables, right? And vice versa.
Like a natural economy based on interdependency and reciprocity. And there's with that a recognition that we all need each other and we're interconnected, right?
Yeah, see, like the true organic symbiotic relationship amongst humans, and even like incorporating animals in a proper way, like, we're all brothers and sisters in a sense, not to the same extent, but you know what I mean. And going back to what Leslie was saying of how, it creates a lot of inner conflict of, this whole money and the motivation behind it. And like, let's say, like, the money is the root of all evil, and it kind of has some religious undertones. And it's kind of interesting that, a lot of religions always keep asking for money because they need it, even though their churches are tax exempt or blah, 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 whatever, maintenance fees and all that, but people were still devoting their whole life pretty much for free, like building cathedrals that they didn't even get to see the finished product of within their lifetime. Kind of something we had a great discussion on religion with the One Great Work Warriors. But with that aside, going back to the inner gnosis and the inner sense, and how we can lose some of that inner sense, and how Chris and I were talking about that, and like how we're in this rat race and trying to make those dollars and cents, and it doesn't always make sense as far as the true sense of what we're trying to have purpose in our life, and how it's kind of
it's not very sensible the way that money
nonsensical, right?
Yeah.
To me, the evil comes in when someone tries to own the money, right? Like in the one situation I described, we're just trading clams, or the people are trading the fur for the vegetables. That's very innocent, right? It's natural. But what makes that evil? When someone sets up a stand where the people are doing the trading, and they put a scale there, right? Okay, that's not evil. It's a scale they're trying to weigh. They're trying to find the happy medium, right? But then, they say, oh, well, I own the marketplace, and you have to pay me to be in this marketplace. Oh, yeah, and you can't bring weapons here. They start making rules and regulations and saying, oh, this is my selling area. If you want to come in my selling area, you have to pay me a tax to sell here. That's the kind of thing that starts to corrupt and make it evil, because now someone's saying, I own currency. That's like saying I own the water, or I own a principle. You can't own something that is what you're made of. Reality is made of morality. And
do you mind
can't
floating down
own
those
morality.
riverbanks that Jordan Maxwell, speaks about regarding money, that whole green language?
Oh, to speak on that a little bit.
Oh, the whole spiritual currency of how, time and attention goes where it flows, and that's not. I was trying to be cute, but
no, it is interesting.
The
The words
birthing
there.
of that whole stuff, and how money's tied into that, and river, bank, and banks are maneuvering, or they have the shape of where the water is flowing, because those are the banks, and the water has to adhere to those. So it's under this, Admiral law, Black's law kind of, manipulation system that we're all placed in this, unfortunately. But yeah, it's interesting how money ties into so many factors of these domination and control tactics, which, all tie into the divide and conquer dialectics and all that stuff.
Yeah. Fiat currency and the world banks, maybe talk a little about how it became even more corrupted, throughout history.
Right. And that's where I was going to go next. What we're dealing with now, that what we call the fiat currency, is fractional reserve banking. And centralized banking, fractional reserve banking, is an evil practice. It's treachery at its core. The very idea of fractional reserve banking is based on debt. It's creating money out of debt. And it's a lie from the very get-go. They're putting magic numbers and then multiplying those numbers upon other numbers based on the fact that you're going to default and not be able to pay it, and then you don't have this money. And they're saying, oh, we have such, you know how it goes. It's like 1 for 7 or 1 for 9. If they lend out $1, then they create 700 magical dollars to lend to others, because you're going to owe them taxes basically on the original money that they lent to you. So it's all a system of evil debt, based on the fact that you're probably not going to be able to pay back as quickly as you want to, which is a pretty sinister when you think about it from the get-go. And when you look back at how that came about, it's an evil program. I really talked a lot about James Corbett's episode called Century of Enslavement, the history of the Federal Reserve. And he gets deeply into the work back to Jekyll Island and the work of G. Edward Griffin, who really, broke the story for everyone about the original Federal Reserve and how it was created and how they pushed it through like this midnight secret session when other people were gone. And now we found out there's even this tie-in. I've heard about the Titanic, people on the Titanic being purposefully sent out to sea and sunk so they wouldn't be there to vote against this central banking, which took them 2 different go-arounds. Originally it was in the early 1900s when they tried to put it in, and then there was some pushback, and I think President Hamilton actually evened out our country's zero balance at one point to where we didn't have debt. And of course, they had to get him out of there and bring back in the centralized control, which goes back in history too, even further to when the original central banking was. It's really interesting if you look into the history of central banking and the way it's been used to manipulate people. Say that again.
Rothschild and all them.
Oh yeah, I mean the bankers have traditionally been the for quite some time the people that have been the sorcerers behind the scene, pulling the strings. I'm sure there's a priest class behind them even, but the bankers are the ones that are out there doing the dirty deeds.
Weren't the Knights Templar? Weren't the Knights Templar some of the original bankers?
You got it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the Knights Templar were known for their central banking that was then used as a model later on to rule and control over people. It gives you a lot of power when you own the currency, which can't really be done, like I said, in reality. But if everybody believes that you own the currency and they pass around these notes that you've created, then they got you. And it's really interesting thing too right here in not far from where we live. If you go down to Sacramento, you can learn the history of the gold rush and the forts there, and how there's this, when you're in downtown Sacramento, there's this one building that was like the gold bank, right? And they describe in there, you can read the little plaques and stuff. Originally, like if you had your stake, right, and you were getting some gold, you would come in there and you bring your little nuggets, and they'd take your little gold nuggets and they'd put them in the safe, right? And they had guys with rifles protecting it from the robbers or whatever. But over time, it was hard to carry around all this gold, and they started writing these little notes saying, oh yeah, we got your gold, you could just trade the notes, and you could see how at a certain point that gets carried away. People start trading these notes, can we duplicate these notes? And eventually the greed gets a hold of people, and the notes become it gets out of control over time. People want to own it. People want more power. And this is an easy way to do that. If you own the notes, you have the power. If everybody comes to you, then you have a little power over everyone. You know, your hand's in everyone's pocket, you know?
And if you can lend the money, that gives you extra power, right? So the loaning of money becomes one way of controlling people.
Absolutely. And, you know, everything in our life is just something else that occurred to me as a relationship. And I've thought a lot about relationships with people, my closest relationships. Mm-hmm. Some of the worst arguments and disagreements were created because of financial or money type situations, because that's really where we feel the crunch in our modern lives, in our modern world. And when we talk about slavery, people are like, what? That's like, you know, back in the South when they had black people in chains. And you have to remind people that, you know, even the slaves during that period of time, most of them weren't in chains. It was belief chains that held people. It was the societal structure that kept people where they were. It wasn't actual physical chains. And the modern version of chains is money. And that's how we're all bound to keep doing what we have to keep doing, even though we want to do something else. What is it that obstacle is money for most of us? I mean, I'm sure there's a few rare individuals that are so financially well off they can do whatever they want, but I don't really know any of those people myself.
And I imagine even then their world is pretty centered around their money, where it is, how they're going to keep growing it, how they're going to hold on to it, what they're going to do with it, right? Money becomes so central to those who have it as well as those who don't. And I'm thinking more about this, like, who do you think, when in your understanding of history, were the people that decided they had ownership, that they could claim ownership of money? And how is that related to the concepts of authority? And
well, I find it really difficult to pinpoint, you know, the who, because, you know, like I really appreciate Richard Grove's work and Grand Theft World he's doing modern these days, but you could go back in his Peace Revolution podcast, and he's got, you know, 15-hour episodes that will go into the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and these guilds and all these connections to these various people and these bankers and these banking families. There's all kinds of big names, the Mellons, and, you know, you can follow these names and learn a lot about these people and these banking gangs and mafias. But where does that really get us? You know, I think some of the things that stick out more for me is like, I was just on this awesome podcast last night with Freeman Fly, and he was one of the ones that originally showed on one of his shows a picture of Monopoly money. And I have in that episode I'm describing a picture of Monopoly money next to our real money, and they're the exact same colors. The coloring they use in the Monopoly game. And he also did an episode, Freeman, about the woman who claimed to have originally created that Monopoly game. And she had created it as an educational tool to teach people how to manage their finances. And then, of course, this big company comes and sort of steals it from her, and they turn it into this game that's more like the reality that we experience. The more you have, the more you can get, and the more you can crush your opponents, and made it into this sort of competitive, evil-based game. And when you look at the sorcery too on the bills, I mean, look up symbols on the dollar. You could spend days on end zooming in on all these little signs and sigils. And so what these things ultimately are pointing to is that this conspiracy, believe it or not, about money is a lot bigger than a few guild of financial families. There's straight up sorcery and evil magic on these bills. And even the word bill goes back to Baal, the god, the demon god Baal, right? And so the words, the green language involved, the symbols, and the sigils are all wrapped up in our mental archetypal understanding of the universe that we don't even touch into. A lot of this is in our unconsciousness. Yeah. But that pyramid with the eye on the top, that's something I think we should discuss somewhat, the Mon eye, the one eye. Yeah. It's owning your central eye, your higher power is being extinguished with this one eye, like the eye of Sauron, right? It's watching everything you do, and it's always in the back of your mind, just like your money in your back pocket. It's deciding whether you're going to go on that mission to see your friend, or whether you're going to start your new podcast. Well, I don't know if I can afford it. Sauron's watching, you know?
It's a trap, man. Watch out. That trapezoid with the capstone missing and all that, and how this, yeah. The symbolic occulted, sigils, like as you mentioned, and wow, could it be possible that someone like an Adam Weishaupt, these esoteric, dark occultists, teamed up with people like the Rothschilds that weren't named that to begin with, which is, you have to dig deep into these things. And yeah, showed the monopoly money thing, like this background. This is a mix I made. It's like an hour and a half long. That's all about money and stuff. And like one of the first tracks is like a 10-minute song. And this guy just like rips through verse after verse, like nonstop, going into the whole historicity of like everything, like dates and everything, and talking, about how the Rothschilds came about and all that stuff, and the old Red Shields, and how, they applied all this, esoteric philosophy, which is a tool. It is philosophy. It is knowledge. We can use it for good or bad. A lot of people, unfortunately, are using it in the wrong ways, and at the highest fucking levels, which is, why the domination and control continues as, I wouldn't say flawlessly, or as, successful as it has throughout the centuries,
Yeah, so there's like clearly some way of organizing the world, right, through this world banking system, correct? That is part of that pyramid, right? It's like demonstrating that there's some controllers at the top that are orchestrating this tapestry that interconnects us through financial interactions, right? And, we may not know who's really at the very, very top, but it's clear that there's an organized system here, and that it is, as long as we are playing the game, that we are subject to the control, of those ups and downs, right? That are being sometimes fabricated, right? Inflation and depressions and things like that. We're like little puppets, riding these waves that I feel like are being orchestrated from these puppeteers that control the money.
Yeah, the language of symbols and archetypes is not well understood in our society. We live in a world where people are very indoctrinated into materialism, and just things are what they are. But when you look at the power of words and symbols, the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? That's why people use poetry. That's why we have paintings, and you can have these amazing ideas and concepts related through or a parable, right? These stories that can mean more. Well, look at that picture on the dollar there with that pyramid. The eye, the little triangle with the eye, is separated from the rest of the pyramid, and it's illuminated. So they're making this picture. The people that are putting that symbol out into the world, it's a sigil, is it has more than just one picture. It has words on it too, which we could discuss if you want. But I think the really key point here is that they're saying, our eye, we are part of this triangle that's separate from the rest of you. You're like the bricks that are just the mortar between the bricks that hold us up, and we're above you, and we have knowledge that you don't have. We can see far into the distance like the eye of Sauron. We have the eye. We're the one eye, and you're not. And that's what they're saying. You're just a brick in our pyramid. And I really liked Mark Passio's way of changing that symbol, and I wear his shirt often because it shows the pyramid with the eye taking up the whole pyramid. And they're saying, no, we're going to take back the eye. We're going to open up our third eye, and I am going to make my decisions because I have the responsibility to choose, and I'm not going to be governed by somebody else. And so really what I think of the equation this way: your time is your energy. Right? That's given to you by the universe when you're born. You're born into this body, you get time. Now, that's something we've all received as a gift. It's an opportunity. Your energy is your time, right? You can only have so much energy in a given day. You run out, you get tired, right? So your time and your energy are the same thing. They're equal. Your time in the modern world is your money. That's the way they're measuring your time. And you're being forced to say, oh, my time's only worth $30 an hour, $20 an hour, $50, whatever. Putting a number on your time and saying this is all the value of it, instead of being infinite like it used to be before these sorcerers started quantifying it and saying, oh, no, it's only worth this number. So your time, your energy, your life, that's your energy. And if someone's saying that you owe them a percentage of that, they own you. They own a percentage. That's like someone saying, I own your right leg for your whole life. Mm-hmm. Everything you do with your right leg is mine. Well, it's more than that, because they're actually raping about 50% of everything you do, your energy, your life force. 50% of your life force of your whole life is being stolen from you. And a huge percentage of that is being used to rape and enslave humans and children and trade them. Right. And suck their blood, literally. That's how terrible of a situation we're in. And they're doing it with sorcery, just like out of the movies. And people don't believe it because they think that's silly.
Yeah. It's so interesting, the idea of what we value, and money is seen as what is valuable. Money gives us value. And then, you tie in the credit score. We have a credit score that's based really on borrowing money and going into debt that gives us a higher score, a social credit score of some sort that impacts whether we can get a house to live in or a car to drive, or, to have a rainy day fund sometimes, so it's related to our security. And, time, energy is what's really valuable. And this money's become like a proxy for our value, right?
A substitute, a crutch.
Yeah. And then you have the color green, there's lots more of symbolism on the dollar bill, or, if you want to share more, but I was remembering, there's some very deliberate choice of the colors, and green being the heart center, right? Care. So it's subconsciously and consciously, again, bringing this value, this love of money, right, through the heart color.
And for me, living in France, actually, in the European Union, it literally looks like Monopoly money, the colors, like you got red and blue and green, it's so, yeah.
These pastels, right?
Yeah,
they're usually more pastels in Mexico too.
A peso to get a little queso. Yeah. All that guap and cheese, please. I mean, how many names they want to throw out just to, I'm breaded, I got my Skrilla and my money and all this stuff. The ego identification with it and all that stuff, and money can buy
make some bread.
tiny toys and all that stuff and hang out with the boys. But what the green also for me goes back to as well, it's like that inverted care. They want people caring about money and that green stuff, right?
And what do we say? You're green with envy, right? And people say money doesn't grow on trees. The green is, you think about our natural environment. The reason blue is used in the news is because blue is a color we see across the whole sky. It's just normal. It's every day. And so that's the feeling it brings apart in your mind, is something normal, something expected, something that's all around that we see as not dangerous, that we're safe and comfortable with. Well, green represents, think about all our sustenance comes from plants. Even if you're talking about animals, they have to eat the plants. The cows have to eat the grass, which is green, and that's why money and leaves on trees are compared, because it's like the current of our life is this flow of being able to grow the food, or the food growing and feed the animals that we whatever we eat. Our sustenance comes through this green current of or flow of sustenance. And when someone owns that, they're owning your very, it's like owning your blood, what flows through you. And every day, as we go out in the world, all of our choices and decisions are partly owned in the world we live in, which is scary, it's a scary thing.
There's that water metaphor, our currency, our flow, it's sort of like the flow of life to be able to keep moving. We need this currency, this money.
I have a little quote I can share. My podcast is the End Evil podcast, and I based kind of the concept off this book, The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke, because he did a really good job in this book in a few pages, in a short book, of just nailing down like a lot of problems in the world and a lot of this whole thing we're going through, humanity, that we're facing. And I like the way he puts things. He says, take a look at a generic historical example of the pattern of tyranny. A rogue thug gathers together a band of men to extort money from the people nearby where he lives. In his success, he plunders massive amounts of money and grows his gang into an army. He successfully kills the previous officers of law and enforcement, or subverts them through stealth, knowing that he can plunder more value in the long term if he leaves his victims alive. He implements a tax upon everyone in his range of influence. He draws borders, he gives decrees. Importantly, he promises his victims that he will protect them from all other thugs. His victims slowly become accustomed to his will and his lies. The people become afraid if they hear their neighbors talk of escaping the taxes and cruelty. Soon they actively support the regime by targeting all treasonous speech and turning all deviants to the police. Originally called criminal, the thug is now called authority. He is now called law and order. That's Jeremy Locke from The End of All Evil. And it just sort of shows the progression of how this happens, and here we are in the midst of a long progression of people stealing from one another for generations, and people are born into that, and they accept it as just being the way things are, that, oh, we have to have money. What would we do without it?
There's also what came to my mind as you were saying the quote is there are borders that are created, which is almost like the edges of our cells, of where, we have our city taxes and our county taxes and our income measured, that we have to turn in to the state and then to the feds, it ties us to territory. And there's this relativism also happening depending on where you live and how much property tax there is. It's a lot of control.
Yeah, land. You want to buy land. A lot of people's solution to all these problems is they want to buy land and move out on the grid. And part of me has been dreaming and working in that direction for years. But I also recognize that it doesn't solve the problem, because you're still bound in so many ways. They're going to come after you for taxes on your land, and if you don't pay them, they got more guns in most cases than most of us do. Maybe that tide will change at some point, but for the time being, there's a massive control system in place to make sure that it's not easy for you to really own anything on your own, right? But I thought it'd be good to kind of bring it back around to like our day-to-day lives and our personal choices, because I'm really critical in this way of people that are claiming to be religious, because I spent a lot of time in churches over the years, and one thing I came to recognize is, although compared to a lot of society, people that are churchgoers actually are thinking about morality and taking it seriously, and I really appreciate that, they're still making money-based decisions. When the council at the top of the church or the board of directors or whatever they call them get together and decide, are we going to put in a new sidewalk leading to the church? Or are we going to put a new steeple on the church? They're going to go to the state and they're going to pay their taxes and they're going to fill out their forms for their little nonprofit. And they're going to make sure that they have enough money in the bank to do what they want to do. And they're not going to go out and feed the homeless if they can't replace their sidewalk first. You know what I mean? They're not going to make completely moral-based decisions. They're always going to make money-based decisions. And I think it's few and far between where we're going to find any examples of anyone really in our society that's not being ruled by money-based decision-making and that's truly making decisions from a moral point of view. So in terms of what we actually face in our personal lives is very similar to what I'm describing with the churches. Even though in theory I understand the philosophy of what's right and wrong, I'm still having a little trouble in the real world not being pushed into making money-based decisions, and who isn't facing that issue?
Right. Right. And those how we're being pushed into making decisions are putting us in conflict a lot of the times with our own values or our own desire of how we want to spend our time. I'm in lots of conflict all the time in these money-based, because I have to make money-based decisions to pay the utilities and pay the rent and buy the food. And so then I am losing my freedom to spend my time doing other things that I value, right? And how do you see us being able to free ourselves from this conundrum?
That's something I've thought a lot about personally. And I think part of it is understanding value. Part of the problem is that we don't understand our own value. Mm-hmm. I like to point out that our body, our being, is like the universe 5.0 or 10.0 or whatever you call it. We're the newest version of reality's finest technology, finest organic technology ever created, in a way. I'm sure there's humans in the past that were bigger and stronger, but we have all history added up to this moment cumulatively, and we have access to all this information, and we have these amazing, valuable bodies, and yet we're being devalued by this current of BS, right? And so part of it is recognizing our own value, and I think the way that's done is through relationships. Personally, often I've thought about what I call shit hitting the fan, right? Shit's getting real. And when 2020 came around and I saw this scamdemic, plandemic, corona crown of evil coming into focus, I was instantly aware that, okay, the next level is being unleashed here. Now we're heading towards Agenda 2030. They've, moved the plan forward. They've shifted the game plan, and they're tightening the noose. A lot of people are like, everybody's waking up. And I'm like, yeah, but we're still making money-based decisions. We're still making evil decisions. So there's no way we're going to cumulatively be heading towards a world of freedom. We got a lot of problems to work through that we've already got ourselves into this problem here, right? So going forward, I've thought to myself, okay, shit hits the fan. Shit gets real now. It's like I was even feeling it. Like I didn't want to go in grocery stores, and I didn't want to go in the bank because they were forcing me to wear a mask, and I was sick of fighting with them about it. And I didn't want to argue with, a lot of times they would put like some young 15-year-old kid at the door that was supposed to put hand sanitizer on your hands with some kind of weird fluoride in it. And, and I'm not going to fight with this little kid, and yell at him, even though I was pissed off. And so it was hard to get food. It was hard to go to the bank. You know what I mean? And I'm like, when I put my debit card in the gas machine, I always think, well, shit, all they have to do is turn that off. And I'm stranded, And what about when the flow of food stops? We keep hearing those warnings in the last couple of years. Oh, the food supply, Well, those things are haven't really completely happened yet. Prices have gone way up. But shit could hit the fan. It could happen slowly. It could happen all at once. We've seen other countries where overnight their money went from being worth 1,000 to 0. And, people are going around with buckets of money to try to buy a simple thing. Overnight, we could be in a whole different world here. And what are you going to do then? You could have piles of money that's worthless, right? So what's going to matter then is your relationships with people and your ability to gather goods and trade goods, just like the old days I was saying, where you got to meet with people and trade the furs for. Can you produce something of value? Do you know how to do anything that's so valuable that someone would trade you money for it, or food? More importantly, you wouldn't need money anymore. Now money would be shotgun shells or cigarettes or corn or rice, And so working on actual real skills builds your own personal value. So the things that you're good at and that you've spent a lot of time doing in your life, it's time to really look at those things and understand the value of them and how valuable they are to other people. And then doesn't matter how good you are at growing food or collecting shotgun shells or whatever, you're still going to have to relate to these people that you're going to have to trade with. And if you have made good connections and networks with people and they trust you over the years, every time I go to Derek, say, hey, you want to meet at such a time, he shows up, I trust Derek. So when shit hits the fan, and you know people that you can go to and trade with and share with and trade skills and value with, you're going to be able to survive, and you're going to be able to create a network and a community. When if you want to stay dependent on the system, you're going to get sucked more into their world. You're going to be stuck in their digital credit card, which I can guarantee is right around the corner. They're going to suck everybody into the one new world order bank card, which is going to be a centrally controlled digital bank card, and you're going to probably have to have something in your skin, right? Yeah. And so the sooner that we're be able to be responsible for our own needs, the sooner we're going to be able to be independent of these systems. And the only way to do that is to learn to relate to people in your community, your neighborhood, and get to know the people that are growing the food.
Yeah, Chris, what an amazing point, and how you drew that together. That our value has a lot, our personal individual value. First of all, we need to value ourselves and know that we are a technology that's being exploited, and that the potential of ourselves is not been, even maximized, but that the value has a lot to do with our relationships and our value to each other, this social value. And that has to be related to, that makes principles important. It makes morality important, because like you said, we have to build trust with each other. So we have to be trustworthy. Our worth has something to do with our trustability, right? Our integrity. And so it really does come back from the material worshiping, the worshiping of the material world and worshiping of some illusory money value, to coming back to valuing ourselves and our relationship to others, and recognizing that we are the source. We are the source of wealth. And that there is like abundance in nature. And so there's an exploitation here on our fear of scarcity, our fear of lack, and the fear of disconnection. And so what you're saying is really so important, because we don't need to be afraid when we connect with the abundance of nature and the abundance of each other, and cultivate our own skills and abilities that will provide wealth for our communities, right? That we can share and trade, and together have combined wealth. I don't know, but it being voluntary is so important, because we have, instead of this taxation and the forced, coercive, energies that are dominating what we do with our ability, with our time, our money.
Yeah, just real quick. Thank you, Leslie. How do we expect to have good relationships with people outside of ourselves if we don't have that proper, and that's, a lot of the focal points of, what, Leslie and I were speaking upon, building the foundational first, 4-5 videos, trying to understand these internal divides within us and all this stuff, and having balance within yourself, having that proper love and respect, love-evolution, if you will. That's part of your solution to having a proper relationship with oneself. And that's just gonna, naturally, hermetically even, just mirror in reality to your favor. Like if people are, just sticking to proper principles and moral, objective morality, so yeah, Chris, I love that part of the solution. And it's hard for a lot of people to really rationalize these things, because we're so intertwined and like entangled by, you know, the nets, traps, and snares financially and all that stuff, and how that ties into so much of the fabric of life and all this shit. So it's like, so I'm gonna trade, you know, avocados for, and that'll pay off my mortgage of this house. You know what I mean? Like, so could you find a way to like apply, you know, some of these solutions to like an average, you know, Joe or Jill, or, you know, who'd be interested in, you know, trying to make something happen, but, you know, like, it just doesn't seem realistic.
Yeah, like one thing that I've struggled with personally is I've really wanted to, for years, when I first came to recognize that all government is slavery, I was actually working for the government. I was a maintenance man, and I was working at the Superior Court. And, you know, as far as jobs that you do at the court, it's one of the more innocent ones, you know. But I did recognize that my money that I was receiving every week in my paycheck was coming directly from this system that was beating the crap out of the local population. And where I lived in Santa Rosa, you could literally see what seemed to me like a laundry machine, just churning people, just churning them like churning them like butter, right? Everybody on the one
too, man. I know, it was Santa Rosa straight up, yeah.
Yeah, like, right, you can, it's like the divide of the freeway. Talk about the divide, right? Where 101 goes through one side of the freeway, there's whole neighborhoods that are just people that are getting daily, weekly, monthly tortured by that system that I worked for. You know, I was basically surrounded where my little cubicle was by tax collectors, you know, straight out of the Bible, right? They're sitting there every day calling people, yeah, you owe the court $3,000. They're calling their neighbor, they're calling their brother, they're calling their family member, trying to get this money out of these people. These people are coming in the door all day long saying, hey, look, I finally got a job, but this job requires that I drive. So I need to get my driver license. They're like, well, sorry, you owe us $3,000. We can't help you get your driver license, you know? They're like, but the DMV said I have to come here and talk to you guys. They're like, well, sorry, you got to go pay them at least $1,500 before we can help you with that. Like, well, I need the job so I can get the $1,500. Sorry, we don't give a crap. We just want your money. So, you know, completely immoral all day long. People are just getting their lives crushed and smashed into the dirt. And, you know, yeah, people could have been a little more responsible and thought ahead and saved their money. But if you grow up and you're already broke, I grew up in a poor neighborhood. I know what it's like. If you're already starting from a deficit, it's like you're in a hole underground and you're digging, right? And these people are living up on top of a pyramid and looking down on you like, why don't you just build a pyramid? And you're like, I'm in a hole. I got a shovel. Only thing I know how to do is dig, you know, and that's making the hole deeper. So for most people, in all practical terms, we're in that hole. And most things we do are making the hole deeper, not vice versa. So, you know, there's a couple solutions, right? One is stop digging, right? But you can't stop spending money in this world. They just, the way things are created, it's just almost impossible. You can cut it down a lot. And a lot of that is making certain sacrifices. Anything great we want to do requires some level of sacrifice. We don't need all the things we come to say we need. A lot of those things are just desires. So one thing is looking at our life in terms of wants versus desires, or needs versus wants and desires, right? What do you really need? So you can cut down what you actually need and what you actually desire and don't spend so much. So that's less digging, right? But in all practical terms, it's one little thing at a time. If you're going to start building a pyramid, which is, to me, representing in this conversation, taking back that power of working our way towards the illuminated eye, you can do that with information, understanding things, having a skill. One of the things that's got me through, there's been 2, 3, 4 times in life where I've quit jobs. Like the court job I've talked about, where I said, I'm done with this shit. You know, I can't do this. It's giving me physical problems. The more I was thinking about it, it was actually making me sick to be in that evil cycle. Especially when I'm listening to what on earth is happening every day and being surrounded by this stuff going on. you have to make a real life decision. So I quit that job, and it's one of the few times I've quit a job without having another one in its place. But what I had to fall back on is my skills, right? I know how to build things. I know how to fix things. It really doesn't take me that long. You could drop me anywhere where people speak my language, and probably even where they don't. And I could say, hey, I know how to swing a hammer, you know, I know how to fix that thing on your wall right there. I know how to make your door work. And people will find a way to pay me. In fact, people are usually pretty happy to pay me whatever method I want to be paid to fix things around their house. And they're willing to circumvent the government a lot of times in order to get things fixed. And what's funny is rich people that I work for, a lot of those things everybody's worried about, like masks and viruses, all went out the window when they're getting their fancy cabinets put in or their door fixed. You know, all of a sudden they don't care so much about all those stuff, you know. So if you have some valuable knowledge, the illuminated eye, you're illuminated. You illuminate yourself with information and knowledge. You make yourself someone who has some skills and knowledge that people need. That has value. And if you reinvest your time and energy into that, you're building your pyramid and you're not digging your hole anymore. So it's not necessarily always like, yeah, I do recommend cutting up all your credit cards and saving up cash instead, or getting into Bitcoin and Monero. I think those are wonderful, awesome things to do. But those aren't really the spiritual solutions. The spiritual solution is building power in yourself by becoming knowledgeable of the actual situation in the world and understanding what the hell's actually going on, and understanding your true value, which is your ability to relate, communicate, and provide value to other people around you in your community.
Yeah, I think it describes levels of attachment. What are we attached to? And, you know, when we're born, you know, as an infant, we develop an attachment to the caregiver that provides us sustenance, that provides us security. And we attach emotionally to that object, right? The caregiving object as the provider of our life sustenance, right? Keeps us alive. And so we have to look at, you know, the types of attachments that we've made to things like money, or
you also say dependency, right?
Yeah, dependency, and it's an emotional dependency and attachment, and we think that we need it for survival. So we just kind of move our attachments from people to the object of money, in a way, and the material accumulation. And we start to think that that's what we need in order to be happy, to survive. But the truth is we don't really need that. That's sort of an illusion created through this habit, you know, generations. And so how can we detach, right? We want to think about detaching and, like you're saying, almost build up separately a new economy in our own mind, and with different attachments. So those could be learning about what has intrinsic value. You know, you being a carpenter is intrinsically valuable. Ability to grow food, to forage, to build furniture, to get along with other people, you know, there's all sorts of things that have intrinsic value that we can then start to separate from these tangled webs that we're entrenched in. So I'll share real quick one little video that caught my eye several years ago was of Mark Passio, and it was like it was something about immoral trash, right? And I start listening to it, and he's calling people that work for the government immoral trash, and I'm like, oh man, I don't like the word trash. You know, and I having my own little triggering around that, but I'm like, okay, let's listen through that emotional reaction. Let me think about what he's saying, that the government is ultimately enslaving us. It's slavery. And if we are putting our money into this system through our taxation, when we are working for the government, then we are participating in this immoral structure, and therefore it's we're immoral on some level. So I started thinking about my own life, and I'm like, well, I don't really, I don't work for the government. But then I'm like, oh, but I have a professional license. I have to pay the government in order to have the privilege of being able to do my job and to use letters after my name. And they tell me what I can and can't do. They tell me I can't work with someone outside a certain parameter of a boundary, a territory. And I receive insurance, and some of that insurance is government insurance. And I started to realize all the ways that I'm connected to these power systems. And so it became a goal for me to bit by bit detach from that interaction. So to stop working in settings that are dependent on federal money, to stop being dependent on government insurances, to build up ways of having income that don't rely on a state license, and you start to realize how complex the web is and how difficult it can be to pay your bills while detaching. But I think bit by bit, doing your best to find yourself in an independent place and then building relationships with other people in this new way of creating this social value and social economy. And any comments on that?
Well, earlier you mentioned trust. Mm-hmm. And one thing that kind of reminds me is I had this really interesting experience when I was 19, 20 years old. I joined a volunteer service, and I wound up in Western Pennsylvania in this little town. And this little town right near the camp where I worked at was called Hooversville. And it was this tiny little town. It had one grocery store and one little gas station and one little bank. And it was called Bank and Trust. And that's what banks used to be called. It had this real old-fashioned sign, Bank and Trust. And that's what banks used to be, is trust, right? And if you think about that, what is it, like I was describing before, in a trade situation or that creates peace and security and the ability to thrive, right? Is trust. We trust one another. And these guys are calling themselves trusts, right? Trust us. But they're not really very trustworthy. How many times has the banking guilds pulled a quick one on us? And, they all work out okay. In 2008, I lost, my whole life savings in a house I was working on because of partly all the shenanigans that were happening behind the scenes with these banking people and lending money that didn't exist and calling it something it wasn't, right? And then they all get bailed out by big government, but people like me that work their ass off trying to, make a couple bucks for their family, we lose out big time. And so to build trust, we have to have relationships with people and be consistent. And that really ties back to our ability to be honest and have what I call our word. Our word is what we are. If we say we're going to be somewhere and we're not, then we don't exist there. We're not there. And the more times you don't exist for someone, the less real you are. So be real. That means show up. That means be consistent. That means show people that you are who you say you are. And honestly, even if we're speaking about matters of truth and we're trying to awaken people, it's the same deal. People aren't going to want to listen to you until they trust you. So I think trust is like saying you're going to do something, showing up and really doing it and being honest. And so building relationships with other human beings in your community and your friendship circle is what builds that trust. And what you kind of see is, like, for instance, we all stress about this a little bit. You see people on the street that are in really bad straits, and you think, oh, drug addicts, people that have gone through some serious life problems. And I'm a really caring, open-hearted person, and I've helped out people many times, and I've met some of the sweetest, dearest people that are in really bad situations like that. However, I also notice and make a mental note What would I do if I got in a tough situation? You know, I got hit with some major medical issue. I got a lot of people I could call on, friends, you know, and I don't have an extended family. I'm not part of like a huge family network, but I have a lot of people that really trust me, that care about me. And if I told them, hey, I need somewhere to stay for a couple weeks, couple months, someone's going to open the door for me. In fact, that just happened to me when I moved to Santa Rosa. You know, I had a friend who took me in, gave me a really good deal on rent, and he still would open his house to me if I called him, because when I lived there with him, I paid the bills and I helped him take care of the place, and I left it neat when I left. You know what I mean? So the little things are the big things. How we build trust with people is, when you go to eat at someone's house, do you just leave your plate on the floor and drop your garbage where you were standing? Or are you a polite, kind person? You go in and wash your dish and tell them thank you for giving me some food, and maybe even wash their dish too. And they go, oh, that's somebody I can trust. That's somebody I would invite over again, right? You need to build that trust with others. And it's also within yourself, of knowing that you have the confidence that you deserve value because you do good things, you know? So I would say trust is my answer to that question.
That's great. You know, isn't it interesting that on the bill, the money, it says in God we trust. Why would it say in God we trust on money?
Because they think money's their God.
Well, they're creating a false God is what's going on there. They're not talking about God that we're talking about. When I'm talking about God, I'm talking about reality itself, morality. I'm talking about natural law. The very essence of what reality is made of is an invisible force of moral justice. But they're not talking about that. They're talking about, when they're talking about God, it's like their little G. They've created a demon. They've created this capstone of illuminated eye, of Sauron's eye, that reigns over you. And their God is their ownership over your choices. And that's really what it is, your little daily choices, like we were saying. You know, I'd rather go for a hike right now and enjoy nature and spend some time with my girlfriend, but I need to make some money today. So instead, I'm going to go to my slave job and I'm going to do what I have to do, even though I don't really like it. It's not really where I want to be right now. What does that send to the universe when you're consciously choosing to be in a moment of doing something that you really don't want to do over something that you would really love to do and that would be enriching and fulfilling? And making that choice over and over and over, what kind of message does that send to reality and out into the universe? It sends a message of submission, of giving up, of being bound to something that owns you. And that's what it is, to bind, just like religion, religare, is to bind. You're bound, you're tied to this money in your pocket and these bills, this bail. You know, he owns you. You know, and that's what they're talking about on the dollar.
Yeah. It's demoralizing spiritually.
Absolutely.
People. Yeah.
Yeah. How many relationships are ruined? You know, couples, families are torn apart because of money issues, or, you know, the dad's not there because he has to work a second, third job or whatever, even, you know, like, and how is, you know, after the aftermath, you know, it can get even worse because you have these single mothers, single fathers that have to work, you know, pile on extra work and, you know, extra stress and all this stuff. And, you know, it's just a very vicious negative feedback loop that's been generational for how long? You know, so
yeah, it's somewhat subconscious, right? It's somewhat, people aren't consciously seeing it for what it is. You know, that all-seeing eye that I've been talking about, that's the eye of Providence, the eye of Horus, right? And what it represents is a reminder that your thoughts and your actions are being observed by a force greater than you, right? And so when we translate that into what we're talking about, God, that would be the force of justice, of natural law, of saying, oh, you're stolen or you haven't stolen. But this whole money thing's based on stealing. That's at the core of what it is. It is stealing. It's taxing people for something they haven't even made yet. You know, and really think about how crazy that is. You know, you haven't even done it yet, and they're already saying you owe something you haven't even done yet. We own Providence. We're watching you. That's what they're saying.
Well, and talk about trust. People are putting just blind trust into the money system, into this digitalized banking world. The more that we turn away from cash and trade, and we're dependent on the digital money, then the more vulnerable we are to having our world shut down, you know, and being obligated, in a sense, to do what we're told and make us a victim to the authorities. And so the belief in authority and the fear of authority is very tied in here. People pay their taxes because they're afraid if they don't, something bad will happen to them, that their security will be jeopardized. So I think it's important to really talk about the belief in authority and how it relates to this perpetuation of this money system that exploits us.
Absolutely. And, real quick on that symbol, just a little bit more, it ties back into what I'm talking about, like being a tradesperson, right? The Freemasons, their symbol, if you look at the Freemason symbol, it's the eye, right? Inside the square and the compass. Okay. Well, that eye in Freemasonry, they're talking about the great intelligence. If you look at the roots of Freemasonry, part of the whole deal was these Masons were people that had knowledge to build pyramids, right? Not many people had this knowledge of how to do this, how to cut the rocks, how to put them together, the mathematics, the Pythagoreans, right? This was secret, alchemy and hidden knowledge that not many people had. So if you had this secret hidden knowledge, you were a little more free than other people. So you had the ability that the Masons could travel across borders that other people couldn't go, and that's why they were Freemasons, and that was why they were able to carry secrets from one place to another, because it was hidden within this guild of having the knowledge of how to build things brick by brick, how to make things. And so when we, right there within that symbol is partly the key to unlocking the door and escaping from this hole and build our own pyramid. If we have the knowledge of how to build our own bricks, of how to make things, be like the Mason, in other words, have knowledge and know things that other people don't know and know how to do them ourselves, then we have this power, to get out of that and not be controlled, So sorry, Leslie, that was I was still kind of finishing that whole thought with the pyramid. Ask your question again, because I know that wasn't the answer to the question you asked.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I was just thinking about how we really can't talk about money without talking about the belief in authority. And that the belief in authority is very tied into people's cooperation with these money systems and the taxation and the licensing and the everything.
You can't make money. That's where I was going with that. Like, even if you know how to make a brick and you could sell a brick and get some money for that brick, sorta, you're getting close, right? But in this realm, we can't if we print our own money, they're going to come after us. They're like, no, that's ours. They own it, right?
That's what they get to do.
You can't be the author of your own story. They're the author of our story. They own the story, and that's what the bill is. The bill is telling you the story. It's got all these pictures on it. It's telling the story for you, the Monopoly game. And so you're in the rat maze and trying to build up enough cheese inside of the rat maze to manipulate the other rats around you. That's not getting you out of the maze. Doesn't matter how much cheese you got. You try to build a pyramid of cheese, the other rats are going to eat it up from underneath you, and you're still in the maze. So you got to be
on the wheel too.
Hamster, a lot more amazing than that, right? To get out of that wheel. Yeah. The wheel of cheese.
Yeah, Chris, well said. And it's important to understand, the etymology of, certain words, especially, you mentioned religare for religion. And just, wow, what you were just talking about with, before you said the rat race. Oh yeah, authority, author. And who's writing the rules and on what pieces of paper and all these bills.
Who's writing our story? Who's the author of our story? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's often occurred to me too, talk about money-based decisions. How many times when paperwork overrules the will of a human being? And think about how scary that is. Like I was saying, the newest, most awesome technology of the universe. I'm the emperor of this domain, of this body, right? And I have these amazing skills. I'm a moving, autonomous, way better than a machine. I think I have a soul, I have a will. And yet a piece of paper can tell me whether I live or die, or whether I have the right to cross a bridge, or whether I have the right to eat something or not eat something, or put something in my body or not. And somebody else is going to come along and say that they can hold their weapons on me, or they can lock me up because their piece of paper overrules my will as a divine being. Think about how ridiculous that is. Think about if you were an alien from another planet that didn't have money and didn't have authority, exterior authority. They would be like, what the hell? You mean that little green piece of paper decides your fate? Why would you let it do it? It's just a little tiny piece of paper, with a bunch of numbers and letters and symbols on it. And that's more powerful than your divine, amazing technology of creation of your willpower and your mind and your soul. How silly is that? That we allow ourselves to live in that ridiculous dream. It's a dream, and we're going to wake up from it, but it's going to be a painful process for a lot of people.
Dream or more of a nightmare? Yeah.
Well,
Some people have these wild dreams, pipe dreams of, making it big, being famous, money driven, of course, type of thing, but yeah, these are just programs that, and yeah, there's always these, wise proverbs that, people love to say from all walks of life of, oh wow, I completely forgot, but yeah.
We're entrapping ourselves, right? Through our decisions, our materialism, in getting ourselves more deeply entrenched and entangled into this web of money dependency. So the freedom really comes from detaching and finding alternative ways of interacting with each other, where this holy dollar bill isn't the God, that we trust in.
Thomas Jefferson said, "For I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man." And that's exactly what the money in our world is the biggest tyranny over the minds of men and women. It's ruling people. It's creating the rules of what you're going to do or not do today. And the more that you find little ways to not let that be the case, the more you're going to regain your power. And like Thomas Jefferson, be willing to truly connect with the divine, the real.
Yeah, super interesting topic. It connects to so much. It connects to our relationship to technology, our relationship to authority. I think, and as more and more people are becoming dependent on money and technology, then there's fewer people that have those intrinsic survival skills. So a lot of people, they're probably very panicked by the idea and not like it at all, because they don't know how to survive outside. They don't know how to grow their food. They don't want to,
Yeah, that's part of the scarcity-based mentality. The reason people are in a state of scarcity is because we're ruled by fear. And some people will say that fear is also the root of evil, just like people will say money is the root of evil. And I would disagree with both of those statements. The root of evil is neither of those things. The root of evil is stealing. It's taking something that's not yours or giving away something that isn't yours to give. It happens in the mental, psychological realm. Money or fear can be good things, right? A fear in a deer is what keeps it alive when a predator is chasing it. Fear of a car is what keeps me either wearing a seatbelt or walking in a crosswalk and not just jumping out in the road. Fear is a motivator to keep us alive and to help us thrive if we use it properly, right? But if we allow fear to cripple us, we become vulnerable.
Yeah, so it's been exploited, that whole fight or flight technology of our body, our nervous system has been exploited by the use of money, making you afraid if you don't have money, if you don't make money, if you don't have enough money. So you're always sort of scrambling out of a stress response. And that's one of the ways that we're being controlled. And I've
often thought of the word governor. like, have you ever gone somewhere and you rent a car and you start driving that car and you push the pedal down and it's like it will only go so far? It like tops out at 79 miles an hour, and they have this device they put on the gas pedal. It's called a governor. And that's basically what, all of politics are. They create governors. It's to keep us from achieving our full potential. And money is acting as a governor and regulator because, like you're saying, stress keeps us from being in that state of mind where our eye is open, our third eye is open.
Yes.
I mean, how many times in life have you got to the place where the what? The one eye. You can't open that eye because you're constantly distracted. You're like, oh yeah, I got to take care of this, and next week I'm not going to have enough money, and oh shit, I got to go to the bank and put that money in, and I got to get the gas. Oh shit, how expensive the gas is. Damn. It's like when your mind's on these things, it's not getting to that illuminated place where you're sitting out in nature and really getting in touch with putting the two sides of the brain together. It's keeping you separate. And it's funny too, I was thinking about that symbol, the dollar, with the two parallel lines and then the S weaving through them. You could think of those two parallel lines as representing the two poles, right? Our
hemispheres of our brain.
The two hemispheres of our brain, or Joachim and Joaz, right? Like the non-aggression principle and the self-defense principle. These are the two pillars, right, of Freemasonry. And what is the S represents, like crossing back and forth between them, the snake of a river, the snake of a river current, right? And it's actually a pretty interesting symbol. And what's interesting about that too is the dollar symbol's nowhere actually on the dollar. And that's an interesting thing because it's a very spiritual, S could stand for spiritual too. It's a very spiritual symbol. And how we weave between these two different aspects of ourselves, the male and the female, the caring side and the strong defensive side, is how we balance ourselves, is how we find balance. And that's up to us. But if somebody else is creating that line of the snake, somebody else is drawing the road for us of how you're going to do it. They're saying you're going to do it like this in our little realm, in our hole we dug for you. I used to have a coin, and I still have it somewhere. I wish I had it right now. And it's like printed by a mining company, and it was like I'm sure it was like Rothschild Oil, JP Morgan Mining Company or something. But like if you worked at their mine, they gave you money, but that money was only good in their store. So you work at the mine, and then they pay you money, and you use that money they give you to buy their products that they're selling you. So they own you from start to finish. You're always revolving in things they own.
Yes. And so while we're off balance in survival mode, we're being robbed. We're, these money systems are stealing from us. They are making up money. They're fakery. They're using fakery and manipulation to create money that doesn't exist, that's not backed up by anything real, in order to throw off, and create turbulence in our lives and, put us into fight or flight and be off balance. So you're right, like finding that center point, in ourselves in order to open up the third eye and to see with our eyes wide open and to see what's happening at a bigger level here is super important, so that we can, recognize that there's wrongdoing going on, there's theft going on, and how, that we have every right to say no and to stop the bloodletting, right, that's happening.
I was just reminded recently of a time in my life when I lost everything. I'd been driving across the country. This is when I was like 22 or something, or maybe even a little younger. And everything I owned was in this Volkswagen bus. Well, it caught on fire right around the border of California, and it burned to the ground with everything I owned in it. I got out of it with my dog and a pair of pants and a shirt. That's all I owned, right? And it was kind of a freeing feeling. Yeah, actually, right after, it felt pretty good. I was like, oh, we're just sitting there. I remember sitting there. I made a little hole in the dirt and I was trying to throw a rock in that little hole, and I was like, this is fun. I don't care about anything right now. There's nothing tying me down, right? I'm not bound to any things. Everything we own comes with a certain responsibility. If you own a dog, you got to feed that dog. You got to care for that dog. Same with all the little things we own. You got a piece of cabinetry. That means when you move, you got to move that piece of cabinetry. When it gets dusty, you got to decide whether you want to clean it or not, or let it get dusty. So every little thing we have, there's like a spiritual, non-visible thread to our responsibility for all these things we have. And so I think there's a lot to be said with getting to a point of letting things go, and recognizing that I've just recently went through this because I had like kind of a bad month, December, financially. And, I was stressing it, and this is what brought it to my mind again. Like, why am I stressing about the money, And when I let it go, things will work out. I'm just got to work hard and keep doing the things I do, and things start flowing back in, things start working. People, like I said, they appreciate the value that I bring to the world, and I'm a hard worker. So I'm going to be rewarded. I'm going to find ways to get food and a roof over my head. I've never really had those problems, and neither will anyone who does a good job of being honest, showing up, being trustworthy, and working hard, And you don't need to have a big giant mansion or a big giant property. Those things all exist out in the world. It's just like the Monopoly game. All those little pieces and houses, they're all in the game. You might wind up being in one of them for a while, you might not, but they're all still there. You don't have to actually own them all in your pocket, in your hands, grasping them. It's all out there. And as soon as we let go of this physical world as being the ultimate reality and recognize that reality actually isn't the physical world, that's the manifestation of the thoughts and ideas that led up to that. What we're seeing in the material world is the result, the cumulative buildup of the thoughts and ideas, which is more real.
Yeah.
And it's the first cosmic law principle. Of course, it all goes back to everything is mind and all that. And thank you, Chris. You're so kind. You really brought home some great ideas and just like very simple, basic, applicable ways of life. And that's great. It's like when you're on that vibe and frequency, it's like the universe has your back. If you're doing good, it's going to be reflected, back towards you,
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate
it's so
that.
Funny. Money, ironically, really creates a lack of trust in God, And so when we actually trust the, what I would say the true God, which would be that which is all of creation, the nature, the natural law. And then when we understand and we embody the principles, then we are activating abundance in our lives, that we have the solutions given. And that is the true trust, the actual place to put trust, not in the false God created by money maker, people sitting up and controlling the dollars, right? Yeah,
but it's just in our world, it just takes such a force of will to keep ourselves there. Like I was saying, just last month I was feeling the burn, I was feeling the pressure. You get sucked back in, and you try to get out, and it sucks you back in. So it's an everyday ongoing practice to have the will to separate ourselves from that mentality that everybody's stuck in, of making money-based decisions. And I think just that term, money-based decisions, is a good one for people to get into their heads. What God do you really want to believe in? What God do you work for? Do you work for the God of that green bill or those numbers on that screen? Or is your God one of principles and the reality that we actually live in?
Yeah. How are you making your decisions, right? And what is the true value that you are demonstrating through your actions? And we can ask ourselves that every time we spend money and we make decisions about our material dependency and what we're attached to. And I think, the reality is, in my lifetime, I'm probably still going to be, having to make money and survive, to some degree with this. But that doesn't mean that my mental state is connected and on that. There's a flexibility that's needed about what is important and the comings and goings of money, right? Like you said, you might have a big house for a period of your life, but you might lose that big house, and you might have a cabin, you might be, and all of that is really okay, because that's not the definition of your value or the value of life. It doesn't define you whether you are a success or a failure either, which has been tied into money too. Like, to be a success, you got to make money. We need to question those beliefs.
I mean, I get to spend a lot of my time with Leslie Powers. How much value does that have? I'm rich,
So
I'm good friends with Derek Bartoloselli, and he came and visited me, and that is worth more than any amount of money. When I call my daughter,
I slept on your couch, thanks for.
Yeah. I mean, those things, I'm rich. I have relationships, and my kids love me, and I have friends that I would die for, and they would die for me, I would imagine. Like, that is worth more than money. That is, I'm rich. I'm rich beyond measure. The knowledge in myself of what I've gained in these years of experience that I can share with others is why I spend the time doing these things. Leslie and Derek and I aren't getting paid for being here. I always forget to even ask for donations. I've probably got, maybe $250 in 3 years of the few times when I've actually asked for some donations, and a few people have kicked me down a little, and much love to those people. So appreciate it. But that's obviously not why I'm doing this. I've spent hundreds, probably thousands of dollars getting the equipment to be on here and to spend my time and energy doing these podcasts,
and missing out on those thousands of dollars you could have been working to make money, for example. You know what I mean? Like, as you mentioned earlier.
So we make these choices, right? Every day. It's an exchange.
These are enriching choices. Like, this experience is enriching to me,
Absolutely.
And brings value to my life. And the time that I spend with friends and with people, in this great work is very, to me, it makes me feel rich. And so
a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. The wealth of friendship. There's so many different, it's a pivot. It's a mental pivot. Like you said, Derek, the power of mind, and not being mine, which is what money kind of creates, the mentality of this is mine, right? We're talking about the opposite of sharing wealth and recognizing that the wealth comes from within and between us. And our richness of our heart comes from a different source.
Yeah,
You know what really? Go ahead, Derek.
Are you sure, man? Yeah, I was just gonna rewind it back because I really loved your analogy with the whole Monopoly stuff, and it's like everything's there and it's all in the box and everything. And I wanted to add in, but I didn't want to interrupt your flow of just being like everything there is temporary. Like, even this life, in this incarnation, it's temporary. We are eternal souls, and so yeah, all this wealth that we're doing, within ourselves, that inner work, and having meaningful relationships and doing meaningful work, and we're having our own magus opus of our own selves, and trying to evolve and betterment for ourselves and ripple that out for others, and just like staying attuned to eternal principles as well. I mean, that's some serious spiritual wealth that just carries on for eons. Not this paper fiat money that isn't worth, the paper is printed on, all that jazz.
Yeah. So this is great conversation, and it's a kickoff for so many topics, I think, that will continue on in our show here. I wanted to tie us up, wind us down. Chris, maybe you could share any final thoughts you have, or a summary of what you think is most important for people to take away on this topic.
Yeah, there's a wealth of knowledge in this conversation. And I think the real challenge for each of us is just, I would say, going forward, if someone's listening to this and they're thinking about the takeaway, is just really having this be part of your consciousness daily. Which decisions am I making, and where are they based? Am I doing it out of fear, or am I doing it because, based on what I see as right? And a lot of these decisions aren't just what you buy, they're what you do with your time. Your time is your money, you know, and your money and your time are your energy. It's all the same thing. There's really no difference. Not much, you know?
Yeah.
And so how do you spend your time and how do you spend your energy? Does it make you feel good? You know, it really gives you joy, being grateful. And when you do something for someone else of generosity and you give something away freely with no strings attached, there's very little in life that will bring you the joy and the feeling of being lifted, you know, than doing those things. It's helping people, doing things that are truly caring, that you know deep down are for the best. I remember one time when I was really young and I knew my dad was struggling financially, and I made a little bit of money on this little job I did, and I put, I don't remember, $20 or $50 in his wallet and never told him I did it, you know? And that feeling still makes me feel good about myself. You know what I mean? So give freely, live each day with lots of gratitude and thankfulness, and you're going to receive abundance. And you're going to recognize that riches and wealth are really things like knowledge and relationships, and that confidence within yourself, that you know you can figure it out, that you have the resources within yourself to create wealth, which is more about relationships and connections and networks than it is about these green evil bills or digital currency, you know. And yeah, shit, get some Bitcoin and Monero too, but you know, I'm all for that. But you know, I'm talking about the spiritual currency here. That's really where I like to go. So check out endevil.life. And as far as building a network, go to chrisjantzen.com. That's JANTZEN, and sign up to my One Great Work Warriors newsletter. And there's going to be opportunities there to get involved with the Warriors, the community we're creating. Derek's part of the core team, the One Great Work Warriors, and we're going to be nurturing a larger community of people. Right now, we're using a Telegram chat. So if you, I'll share my link tree maybe in the notes, or if you look in my work, you'll find it. And let's work on building our communities and our second realm.
Yeah, great. Well said. Yeah, I love
to be a part of this. I really appreciate everything.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
I really love how you highlighted, you know, what every day we can be conscious and aware of our choices and ask ourselves, you know, from what motivation are we making a decision? Is it money-based, or is it based on principle and value? And are we in alignment with ourselves in how we're spending our energy and our time? This is really great. Great food for thought. Thank you so much, Chris. Awesome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Ever since you guys started Dissolving the Divide, I've been, you know, gunning, excited, looking forward to being on it and being a guest, and appreciate my opportunity here. And look forward to seeing all the wonderful work you guys are putting out. It's so much I can't even keep up with it all. I love it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, look forward to having you on again. Keep expanding.
Yeah, hell yeah, Chris. Did you want to mention anything else real quick as far as like any future endeavors? Yeah.
The planning for Funnel 3 is underway.
Yeah, because I don't think we mentioned that in the introduction, because you co-hosted, you know, Freedom Under Natural Law conference. You know, the last one, you know, featured Leslie and some other folks like the good old Brandon Spencer.
Mark Passio.
Yeah.
Yeah, Freedom Under Natural Law number 3 is going to be called the Trivium, and we'll be advertising that just in the coming weeks. And we're putting together a list of speakers. Today, actually, we're working on that. And so if you haven't yet, go to freedomundernaturallaw.com and register, put your name. That will put you on the email list. And whenever we get around to sending out announcements, you'll be the first to receive those, so you can be in the know. But we're looking at, is it June 25th? June 24th and 25th weekend. And anyway, that flyer will be going out. Hook up with us on various social media channels. Leslie and myself, Will Keller, and Derek will all be sharing this stuff. So yeah, you got lots to look forward to. Seeds coming up, all kinds of great work. Leslie and I are going to be doing a wake at the lake, and you know, I've got all kinds of stuff I've been working on So really looking forward to it. Did an awesome podcast last night with James Cordner and Sean McCann on their Black Pill Digest with Matt Landman and Freeman Fly, and that was just like so exciting. So that's something you guys should check out too. But
that was on geoengineering mostly.
I was on weather engineering and chemtrails, and yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of stuff to check out and lots coming down the road. None of us are giving up. We're going stronger, and we're picking up more will and energy and power, and collecting more friends in our network as we go. So get on the good side of history, folks. Now's the time. You're lucky to be in this time and to have the opportunity to be a hero, so do it.
Yeah. All right.
Well said, brother. Thanks so much. Looking forward to the good things to come with what's going on.
Yeah. Already. All right. We'll see you later.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you much, everyone, for listening. Ciao.
Yeah.
Types of money that are recognized globally. One type's real and the other more phony. Let's begin with the real and expose the fallacy, concluding with a timeline of our economic reality. If money makes a man strange, we got to rearrange that. Makes the world go round. Listen, I don't know. Gotta change the way it's going down. Money.
Do not tamper with natural law. Defend it. Defend it.
I'm in a cage. I'm in a prison. I'm in a mental prison, and a physical one at that, and definitely a spiritual one, whether that's recognized at a conscious level or not.
As I wait for my sleep, the situation's got me thinking deep. Will the earth the sink and all life is in extinction? Evil creeps in your dreams, secret teams throwing memes, and the filling in the in-betweens. My control for the teens, now they got you on your knees. I'm making my way through this open maze, but I'm dazed by mass confusion. All the images that they're using.
There's the rest race to the tip of the top of the pyramid. The pyramid.
Falling in, to this low level of spiritual awareness, such that these methods can have any effect over us.